Hi, my name is Kim, and I want to share with you my story of how I created Head Shape Matters. Head Shape Matters is a cutting system that is based off of the truth that everyone's head shape is different. We learn a haircut, or 5 haircuts, or a trend haircut, and we're never taught how to adjust it to an individual's head shape. And it makes all the difference. Head shape truly does matter. I want to share a little bit about my story and how I created this system. I was a artistic cutter, you could say. You know how you have musicians and some can play music by ear, and some have to go and learn how to read music and can only read sheet music. Well, I was one of those that could cut hair just visually. I could see a shape and recreate that shape just visually. But I didn't understand technical hair cutting. I didn't understand angles. I didn't understand any of those things. So for 12 years I cut hair by ear. I took a class from a man named Hans Korpela, who is now my mentor. And I took that class 12 years into my doing hair. I was a salon owner. I was completely booked. I could not take new clients. I had a full-time assistant. We would work 13-hour days. I was slammed. So obviously I knew how to cut hair and make it look good. I knew how to create or recreate a picture on someone's head. So when I took this class and I saw how to cut hair technically, in other words, how to read sheet music, I was blown away and I left in tears. I was very angry at my instructors from school, from any class I'd had in my career, that I had never seen this before and I had never learned how to cut hair technically. I came back to the salon and I implemented ended up being an 8-year program of learning to cut hair technically, which was very hard. You know, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So I just started the process and I would just ask my clients, maybe the one at the end of the day or somebody I had time with, to hold the book, and I would just go step by step and try to retrain myself. It took a full 8 years before I became a very strong, where it became such a habit to cut technically. I became very strong in precision haircutting. So the pendulum had swung for me. So after I had implemented all of those techniques, and I just became more and more obsessed with becoming a master in my craft and becoming a master hair cutter. So I stopped coloring hair and I started increasing the amount of time I had for haircuts. And I asked my guests that, I not talk while cutting hair, because I wanted to study. I wanted to understand hair cutting on a very deep level. I wanted to be a master. So I started this process and I went from 30-minute haircuts to 45-minute haircuts to hour, and ended up at an hour and 15, just so that I could study. And the fact that they let me do that was amazing, and I am so grateful. During all of this studying and trying to be a master and a precision hair cutter, I started to see some things that were not working. And it turned out it wasn't because my haircut was not precision enough. I would go back through and check and check and check, and my cutting was solid. The technique was there. But yet I was seeing things that didn't make sense to me. For example, on my hair, I had long hair for a long time, and there was always a jump, like a buildup of weight right in here, a step. And it would drive me insane, and I would pick the hair up and try to find it. Look, where is that coming from? And I just could never find it, because in projection, it was blended, but in fall it was not. Another example of something that I saw was I had learned a great technique on how to build round graduation. On mannequins it worked beautifully, and on most guests if they wanted something like a bob. So I used it on this one particular client, and it looked like a square. It looked like a one length line with a little bit of layer right on top. And I couldn't understand why this had happened. So I went back through, cut it again, just to make sure, and the exact same thing was there. So I needed to understand why these types of things kept happening. What I came to understand was that it had everything to do with head shape. And so I started looking at, what does that mean? How would I have to cut it differently? Because one head shape is different than another. For an example of my head shape looks something like this. So I have like what I call an A-frame. So what was happening on my hair was that these two sections were being cut the same, being pulled out. So if you look at what's happening right there, if this was being held out, if you look, just look at this one area right there. If I hold the hair here and cut it straight up and down, I'd be cutting at 90. If I hold it up here, that's more like 135 for this vertical plane. But if you look at this diagonal plane, if I'm cutting this out here, on that diagonal plane, I'm cutting the hair at 90. So you can see that when this hair falls, I would end up with a jump in the hair between those two planes. What happened with my other guest that I told you about, she actually has a very flat head. It's flat all the way up and down the back of her head. And every time I thought I was lifting the hair a little more, a little more, a little more, creating graduation, in fact I was not, because her head shape was not changing until I reached the very top, which gave it that little bit of layer. I was trying so desperately to find the answers on how do I change that? How do I cut differently to accommodate for different head shapes? Being a salon owner, a mom, traveling and teaching hair cutting on the weekends did not allow me the time to study and do experiments like you see behind me to figure out what was happening and how do I change up cutting to accommodate the head shape. So I closed my salon, and for the past 2 years I have been doing a lot of research, a lot of experiments, playing with different angles, different head shapes to try to find a system that would work and make sense. So I've created Head Shape Matters, and I'm excited to share it with the world. And you can learn more about it on my Facebook fan page, which is Kim Moore Hair Education, or my website, KimMooreHairEducation.com.